Blog Talk Radio.
Hello and welcome to Songs of Selah here on 17 Numa Radio. I'm your host, Scott Thomas Outler, and I want to thank you for tuning in to the program this evening. It is Saturday, April the 6th, 2019, and I'm looking forward to being here with you for the next hour and also welcoming on a wonderful guest in the following segment, an author and actress and all-around Renaissance woman, but even more importantly than that, a wonderful person in general, and someone who I've had the pleasure of calling friend for the last couple of years. Carol Grace Welter will be joining the program to talk about several different subjects, one of which is the event that she hosts at the UUCA in Atlanta, Georgia, called Wine, Cheese, and the Spoken Word, which I have attended on several occasions and know that it is always a wonderful evening. So want to speak to her about that and how she got involved with the program. And then I'm sure what we will be talking about most of all is the recent production of the Laramie Project, which she has been a cast member of. And in fact, the final show of their production just wrapped up this afternoon, so I'm sure that energy and adrenaline is still buzzing profusely through her mind, and it'll be fun to get the feedback on how that final show went to pass and many other things. So just want to touch on a few other brief topics here at the top of the show before Carol joins us in the next segment. And I guess I'll start that off by saying, on the note of the Laramie Project, I was actually at Clayton State University for the edition that they put on last evening, and I'm glad that I chose that night to go and visit, because not only was it a wonderful play and all the cast did an incredible job, but after the final act, the cast and crew came back on stage and had an interactive discussion with the audience that was still in attendance, and so had some great insights into how the whole production came together and some of the different skills and techniques that were used by different actors in the play. And so I'm sure that conversation from last night will carry straight on over into this program today and get some more feedback from Carol on what I'm sure has been an amazing experience for her overall. It has been a wild year so far, so many beautiful things happening, and reflecting on that fact here as spring is still in its early weeks. The last week itself has been one of the more exciting of them all on a personal level. At this time last Saturday, I was in the air flying back from a connecting flight from Seattle back here to Georgia after having spent the previous week in Portland at the AWP conference and reading at a couple of events that took place out there, including one organized by Christina Deptula of Synchronized Chaos magazine at the Open House Co-working event there in Portland. That was an amazing time. and there are videos from that, and also the Eastburn Public House reading that I did while in the city on my YouTube channel. But exciting weeks, and all of the good times did eventually catch up when I got back here to Georgia. Had a couple of days of business meetings and other events here in the city, and then came to a crashing halt as the flu finally caught up with me. And it's a rare thing when I get sick, but these things happen to us all occasionally, and so a little bit of shivering like a dog for a few days is actually something that can be looked at in a positive light, because even while it's going on, I knew that it would eventually pass, and that the state of health and well-being would return, and when it did so, I would be even more thankful and grateful and appreciative than ever of good health and being as dedicated as possible to staying on a clean path with a clean diet that equals clear thoughts, and that leads to focused intentions and moving continually one step along this path of life, and just being thankful for the beauty and the blessings that are all around, especially here where I live, where the pink and the purple and the yellow and the green and the orange and the red are coming into vivid kaleidoscopic color all around. The trees and the plants and the flowers are starting to do their thing called blooming into full fruition, and I can't get enough of it. Even though it happens every single year during this season, I'm still always awed anew, and the sound of the birds singing and the bees buzzing, even if it is sometimes of the carpenter variety that like to eat into the wood of the house, well, all these things are wonderful as well, and have to take them all in stride, especially those melodies from the sky. And the butterflies, of course, are on their way as well, and that is indeed the most beautiful sight of them all. But not to get too carried away in a rant about the beauty of life, although I'm not opposed to talking about those sorts of things for as long as possible, I did also want to mention some exciting news. The fact that my upcoming book of Sand and Sugar from Cyberwit Publisher out of India, the author copies arrived while I was in Portland last week, and so I've been able to flip through that book for the past several days. And in fact, earlier this week, I attended a poetry reading at the Alpharetta Library in the auditorium there, which was a beautiful location, and for the first time got to crack open that book and read a few pieces from it in front of an audience. And that performance is also up on my YouTube channel, I should say. And if anyone wants to check that out, they can just go there and do so, and I appreciate it greatly. It was a lot of fun reading from the book for the first time. Always a cool energy to have the physical copy in your hands for the first time. And each book that I've put out, this now being my 6th, has become more and more exciting, and I feel like I'm learning new lessons of the process with each new publication, and seeing this one come to fruition, especially in this spring season when such things are meant to be manifested, is a very special occasion for me, and I'm looking forward to celebrating National Poetry Month with a book launch on April 20th at the Auburn, Georgia Public Library on a Saturday. It's going to be taking place at 2 p.m. And so any Atlanta area friends and friends here in Georgia or from anywhere around the country or world who want to attend that launch. I think it's going to be an absolutely amazing day, and I'm looking forward to seeing a lot of great friends and having a blast reading some poems that day. And the actual official launch of the book is on the 17th. Pre-orders are available on Amazon or through cyberwit.net, and you can find more information at 17numa.com, which is my website. I do urge people to subscribe to that blog if they haven't already, and you can also find the archive for past episodes of Songs of Selah there, and also at 17 Numa Radio. Wanted to mention the previous episode earlier this week that featured an interview with James Diaz, and also an amazing group of people calling in during the open mic to read poems. It was one of the most inspiring episodes that I've done of this show so far, and I always say it's about learning about other artists and their philosophies that gets me the most excited about doing this program. And there's just a lot of positive news and energy and information that came out in that episode, so please do check out that archive and subscribe to 17 Numa Radio to get in the loop for all the great upcoming guests that are on the way on the schedule. And I think that'll just about wrap it up so that I don't run my mouth too long. Got the great guest Carol Welter coming up on the program just on the other side of a musical break, and this is Stand By Me. See you on the other side. Cheers.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see, no, I won't be afraid. Oh, I won't be afraid, just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Stand by me. If the sky that we look upon should tumble and fall, or the mountains should crumble to the sea, I won't cry, no, I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. Stand by me. Whenever you're in trouble, won't you stand by me? Oh, stand by me. Whoa, stand
Welcome back to Songs of Selah. It's a wonderful way to start this second segment, Stand By Me by Ben E. King. And without further ado, Carol Grace Welter spent her formative years in London. While in the United Kingdom, she attended the Shakespearean Conservatory, where she was trained in classical theater. Her studies included, but were not limited to, the following: Molière, Chinese opera, Greek theater, and the legendary traveling troupe's Commedia dell'arte. Carol is a modern Renaissance woman. Her passion for the arts has taken her not only into directing theater, but she spends her free time writing poetry and is known to break out into song at the dinner table and grocery aisle. To her credit, she introduced the first Shakespeare play, As You Like It, to the sleepy southern town of Leesburg, Florida, where it was so well received the show ran over by weeks. Additionally, Carol directed a modern-day version of The Merry Wives of Windsor. At the UUCA Underground Theater, Carol directed and produced And Then Came Tango, Swamp Lily, and the premiere About Clarence. So thank you so much for joining the program this evening, Carol. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Scott. Thank you for the introduction.
Oh, my pleasure. It's an honor to have you here on the show tonight. I know that your schedule has been action-packed here lately and that you just finished up the final show of the Laramie Project production, so maybe that's the perfect place to start off tonight and talk a little bit about what that production has been about and how the response has been and how that show today went.
Yes, so today's was our final performance. It went very well. It was a matinee performance. And the story, the moments in history that resonate with you, it's about the murder of Matthew Shepard. And Matthew Shepard was a gay student, and he lived in Laramie, Wyoming. And it was actually his murder that was listed as a hate crime that instigated Barack Obama to sign into law protection for gay and transgender people. So it's a very, very important story. It's been a little over 20 years since his death, and the story is still prevalent today. And we've come, as a society, we've come a long way since Matthew Shepard's death, I think. The director questioned, or have we? But the play definitely leaves us, I think, with a sense of hope. And it's developed an awareness. It's really theater for social change, this type of play. And I feel very humbled and privileged to have been a part of it.
How did you get involved with the Clayton State University production that was going on there?
Well, how I became involved, I made a decision to get back into the game of becoming a student and advancing myself. I'm actually working now towards my MFA. I went to Shakespeare Conservatory and Theatre School where I grew up in the UK. And so now I'm a senior and back at university and doing my work, doing definitely a major in theater with not just an emphasis in classical theater, but theater on a whole, stage, film, modern plays as well as historic plays. And so now I'm a part of that program, and I'm absolutely loving the challenge of it.
Yeah, y'all did an absolutely amazing job as a cast, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the technical aspects because each of the members had to embody so many different roles in that production, and I wonder what that process of having to learn the lines and take on so many different aspects is like compared to some of the other plays that you've done and working with that ensemble in general here recently.
Yes, it was very different for me. As you saw, I played 5 different roles, but many of the ensembles, the cast members, they played 7 and 8 different roles, and with huge segments of dialogue. The way the play was written, it was from a set of interviews. The Tectonic Theater came from New York and traveled to Laramie, Wyoming, and they did over 200 interviews. So all of the dialogue that you experienced from the people of Laramie was actual verbatim quotes as it was written. And so, yes, it was a challenge for me, being a senior, having a little bit of short-term memory loss at times. But I think this was just absolutely fabulous. The whole ensemble, the camaraderie among the cast as we worked together, and having an amazing director. She's not a dictator at all. She really allows you to explore the character and bring out the interpretation of that character as we see it as individuals. And that was wonderful for me. I really feel like there was such authenticity in doing this.
Well, you say bringing your own interpretation to those roles, because this particular project is one that's been popular and done so many different ways across this country and I'm sure the world. So when researching, are you looking back at some of the past performances and things other people brought to it, or is it bringing that completely up from the depths of your own personal connection that you find with the characters?
Well, I tried not to look at any video or any of the other performances because I didn't want to mimic that. One of the characters that I played was Sherry Johnson, and Sherry Johnson was a very self-absorbed woman who was extremely bigoted. But it's important to find a part of the character that when you're performing a role that you actually like, that you can relate to. I don't think the character of Sherry Johnson in and of herself, she didn't realize that she was a racist woman. She didn't know that she was bigoted. She really felt very justified in how she expressed her feelings toward a gay man. And that was her truth. So I basically had to climb into her values glasses and look at the world through Sherry Johnson. I'm not Sherry Johnson, but Sherry Johnson became me for those few moments that I was on stage, expressing her views on stage. And the beautiful thing about that, Scott, is that what theater does, it allows us to have compassion, because we can look at every single role that we play through the eyes and the values and the socialization of each of those characters that we play. And that allows for understanding, and it allows for forgiveness. And to me, that is the most righteous thing that we could ever have.
That's so well said. If we don't find some trace of humanity in those performances and be able to look from that sort of perspective, then there's no possibility for growth or trying to find the way to make amends for those philosophies and opinions that people have, and just casting people as villains and the black and white, wrong and right type of energy that a lot of America has, unfortunately, at this point, and maybe some justifiably so. But in order to find that kernel of truth is the only way forward. And I love that idea of forgiveness you closed on there, because That is the key to this whole human thing that we're all living.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And this was a heinous crime that was committed. But as you saw the different perspectives from the different characters, we could understand why they felt the way that they felt. We don't have to agree, but we can understand. Standing that brings about compassion. And that way we don't hate our enemy. We understand, hey, this is the way this person has been socialized. And we all have a choice. We all have a choice, of course. But we're very much a product of the society and the community that we were raised in.
Absolutely. And finding those solution-oriented ways forward, I think, comes from that place of compassion. I'm wondering, after the show today, when the final wrap was set, did the cast have any sort of special celebration?
Yes, there was a get-together. We all worked together, of course, to strike the set. And, actors, I think you develop camaraderie and a feeling of family with a cast, especially with an ensemble cast like this. And, saying our goodbyes, it was almost like saying goodbye to family. But the nice thing is that we'll do another show again.
That was leading to my next question. What's next there for Clayton State University? And also, going back a little bit to something you said when you talked about returning to get your MFA, was there a specific moment in your recent life that motivated you and urged you to make that return?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you asked that question, in fact, because, now that I'm about to have my 64th birthday, it's not so much for me what I attain in this life in terms of material things, but it's how I want to be remembered. And so I would like to be remembered as somebody who played some life-changing roles that made a difference. And, so that, and I also want to be able to make the difference in the lives of people that I interact and I teach with. And so, it's definitely now winding down to, when people think of Carol Welter, how do they think of her? And so putting myself in an institution of education and learning and relearning where I can really develop myself and I can reinvent myself. Yeah, definitely. That's how I want to be able to do some things in the theatrical world that are life-changing. I want to do theater for social change.
Well, there can't really be a much higher calling than that, it doesn't seem. Trying to use your wealth of experience and everything that you've brought to the table so far to give back to others is a beautiful concept. And so kudos for that. And I can say on a personal level that I know that you do that sort of thing, including with the involvement that you have at the UUCA, where you bring people together every other month for the poetry event that you host there. And wondered if you could talk a little bit about that event that you host and how you got involved with that.
Well, I'm the founder of Wine, Cheese, and Spoken Word at UUCA, and I became a member of the Performing Arts Committee, and one of the things that I wanted to bring to the table was the opportunity to bring people together to express their art and their creativity in spoken word. And I discovered in the UU community and also with talking with friends and people outside. And there are so many different poetry reading groups in the greater Atlanta area and in the suburbs. And this is something that I could host. I said, this is easy. And why not provide a forum for people like you who could share their work? And so that's when I began spoken word. So we do, we started out doing it once a month. And when we started 3 years ago on the fourth Saturday of every month. Now we do it every other month. And it has been wonderful. It has opened so many doors for so many different performers, people who were closet poets. But now they're getting up and they're speaking in front of a group of people. And a lot of what I do now, I will, because I'm a theater director, I will teach writers how to perform their work to engage with an audience. Because people are great writers. A lot of them are just tremendous writers, but they don't know how to perform the work and to develop their voice and to really make it interesting and entertaining. And I love to be able to give the writers little tidbits. How can I do this? How can I make this poem pop? How can I make my free verse pop? How can I make a rhyming scheme, not just da 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 da? How can I lift that off of the page and make it come alive?
I love that. Another aspect of giving back, and there is a sense of introvertedness to a lot of writers, and so developing that skill of how to perform in front of an audience and bring it to life is definitely a skill that needs good mentors and teachers, and you've done an excellent job. I can say firsthand that that's one of the best events in Atlanta, and as you said, there are so many of them, and it's cool seeing people that you originally meet at the UUCA and then start to see them scattered out at other events throughout the city, and I love that commonality of the artistic circles that run together. And you're currently in a transition phase with the UUCA from the building that you used to be in, and maybe talk a little bit about the process of where y'all are moving and the location you're at now and how that's been so far.
Well, of course, at our home, 1911 Cliff Valley Way, of over 50 years, there was an underground theater there. And so that was where I started out, at the underground theater. And now Children's First has basically bought the entire block of buildings along that 85 corridor, which included our property. And so we are now in temporary digs while we're renovating another building, and which will have a theater in it. So we're working with the temporary digs, which is kind of nice. We don't have a theater, but we do have a performance space. And the lovely thing is that, you know, when people want to come together and have a party, they have a party. They'll set the tables up. If it's in the middle of the street, in somebody's cul-de-sac, in somebody's backyard, and we're all going to get together and we're going to have a party. We're going to read our poetry and we're going to sing and enjoy ourselves. And we have found a way to do it and to make it work. And it's been wonderful. So I'm very pleased. I'm very pleased with the way things have gone. The momentum hasn't broken down at all. It's just continued on.
I want to get back to something that you had mentioned a minute ago when you talk about trying to get people to bring out the writing that's inside of them for performance. You're a person that when you're on stage and reading your work or in the play, as I saw last night, have a sense of confidence and understanding of the self that comes out very clearly. And I wonder what your advice is to people in general to find that confidence within themselves, because we all have it there somewhere, and to tap into it and to be able to bring that forth.
Well, it's a practice like anything else. If you're practicing meditation and you're practicing to return to the breath when your mind wanders, it's definitely something that is not going to happen overnight. It comes with time and putting in the work and making the effort, like any skill. So it does take time. It's in terms of individual pieces of work, like prose and poetry, whether you're reading somebody performing somebody else's work or your own work, the important thing is to understand the objective of the work. What is the objective? What do you want to communicate to your audience? What is motivating you? What is motivating that character that you are performing in the piece of prose or poetry? And if one can understand that, then it will come out in the voice and in the body language. There's something called, yes, it does. There's something called psychological gesture. And the psychological gesture is how you move your body, which is motivated by emotion. And so that's a lot of what I will teach my actors and people who come to me and ask for advice. I will teach them how to embrace that gesture. I will teach them how to develop the emotion in their words. I will ask them to tap into the emotion. What is the character feeling right now? And
like that idea.
Just to take, yeah.
I'm sorry. Keep going.
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
No. You didn't cut me off. You're fine.
Okay. I was just thinking the idea of the psychological gesture that brought to me the mind, or the idea of the gesture as also the fool. And when you're talking about how you have to continue practicing and putting the work into these things, you also have to be willing to be the fool and make mistakes along the way and be able to understand that that's a necessary part of moving toward a proficiency in any sort of life skill. And so that idea of the gesture, even though it's not necessarily involved in that aspect, just triggered that in my mind as an add-on to that. But I wanted to ask you also about, you say that returning to the theater at this point of your life is about giving back and teaching and being a mentor. What was it in the beginning, when you go back to your early days in London, that initially got you inspired toward the arts and the theater?
Well, what initially got me inspired, I think, was my parents are West Indian, and we were in the town where I was raised, in Watford in Hertfordshire, we were the only minority family. I went to a school where the only other person of color was my sister. And one area that I found acceptance in was in drama. And it was coming back to what we talked about earlier, about compassion, about understanding the character. So the students that worked alongside with me, and I worked alongside of them, they could understand the character of me and my home. When they went home at 3 and 4 o'clock, they were going to have tea because they had their dinner in the middle of the day, and they had tea, and which was basically tea and sandwich and some cake maybe or some biscuits, and that was their evening meal. When I went home, my mother probably made chicken and rice and beans and vegetables. So when I invited a friend over for quote-unquote tea, they came over to my house and they saw a different meal entirely. So that was the UK back in the 50s and the 60s. It's a lot different now. It's a lot more cosmopolitan. You can go to the pub now and get a curry, which back then it wasn't that way. So I felt that I received acceptance from my teammates in theater, in speech, in drama. And I accepted them. I understood the different class structures and the different cultures, and they understood me. And that was a beautiful thing. That was just heavenly to me at the time. I didn't know it in a cognitive way, the way I do now, but now looking back on it, I realize how accepting it is. And, you know, I would like to make theatrical studies part of every school's curriculum because I think it would take away so much judgments and even bullying in schools if we could understand why the other person is the way they are.
That does make a lot of sense and give people the opportunity to take on different roles and almost force themselves to get into those altered states almost. And the younger in age you can do that, the more harmonized you're going to be overall with everyone. I think that's a wonderful idea. And you're full of them, of course, but through your early years there, studying in London, and since then, are there any performances or roles that you've taken on through the years that stick out as being highlights?
Yeah, there are a number of them. I particularly liked Molière and studying the Molière comedies. I was part of a touring company where I played Jacqueline, who was the nurse in The Physician in Spite of Himself. And I was really able to understand what it was like to have to do 2 shows every week for 40 weeks. And to be able to bring that character new and fresh to the stage every single time, that was a challenge. And I have such an appreciation and a respect for actors who do these live long runs or, you know, these performing arts series where they travel all over the country performing a role. The Broadway series are like that. And that I learned so much about myself, and being able to work with an ensemble cast where you're with this group of people day in, day out, driving on the bus, carrying your gear, setting things up at the different locations, taking it down. Oh, my God.
Like you said, a family environment, that camaraderie-ship, I can imagine, it's just a beautiful thing. And also, I'm sure there are some moments, like any family, where tensions are spiked.
Yeah.
But such is life.
Yeah.
But yeah, especially on those long tours. Wow. When you talk in your bio about spontaneously breaking out into song at the dinner table and in the grocery aisle or wherever you might be in life, I wonder, maybe speak a little bit about what you think it is about music and about song and about just the vibration of the word expressed from the humans that resonates with us so greatly, and song specifically.
Well, it's interesting. As I was putting together my bio, I actually asked my daughter to look at it, and she has her master's in fine arts, and she does creative nonfiction. And she added that little bit about breaking into song at the dinner table and the grocery aisle. And I looked at her, I said to her, do I do that? And she goes, yeah, Mom, you do it all the time. I said, really? She goes, oh, yeah. We'll be going down the grocery aisle, and you'll suddenly, Madame Gaston, can you imagine? And I said, do I do that? And she goes, yeah, you do it all the time. And she said, then at dinner now you're going to sing and so on. And I said, you're right. I didn't realize, though, that I was so in your face about it. She goes, yeah, Mom, you do it all the time. But I don't consider myself really to be a great singer, but there's a lot of musical quality to my voice. And one of the things where I think I'm very gifted is that I'm a performer. And so I love to get up and sing. I find it extremely therapeutic. There was a time in another life where I sang in a jazz and blues club on Friday nights and Saturday nights, and I did a Sunday show because there was a time in my life I was raising my kids and I needed to make extra money. So it was a kind of a piano bar set up. And I sang show tunes. And I worked solely for tips. And I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I did it for a whole year and a half, and I really enjoyed it. And so, yeah, we find the beautiful thing about creativity is that we find creative ways to make our life work, like you with this radio show, and I followed your story and all of the things that you do. You've found different creative outlets, right? And so it's kind of like that. So yeah, those are my song breaking moments, Scott. I'm likely to be walking down the road. I'm going for a walk. I go for a walk daily on the nature trail around here, and sometimes I do find myself singing as I'm walking down the trail.
I think it's absolutely wonderful. It speaks to almost a spontaneous sense of joy that's in the spirit and connecting to the Holy Spirit, really. And I can definitely identify with you about walking on those nature trails. I find myself sometimes dancing along the sidewalks as I'm heading that way. And I wonder if the cars that are passing by think I'm a lunatic, and then I think I just really don't care, and I keep dancing. But
that's right. It's good endorphins, right?
Absolutely. It sparks those neurons and keeps us inspired. And as you said, finding those different creative outlets, I think it's something that we're born to do, to be creative, but then they also allow us to meet other individuals who are doing the same and get into these collaborative efforts and these communities, and meeting people like you and everyone else along that journey is part of the blessing, and it makes us better people ourselves, seeing how other people shine. It brings out the best in us all.
Yes,
sense of
yes,
inspiration.
it does.
So what eventually led you away from London, and how did you make your way here to the United States originally?
Well, my husband wanted to move to the U.S., and my parents also retired and went back to Jamaica. And so they retired in the 70s. And so we came here, and my children were all born here. And, yeah, so I've been here since 1974, which is a long time.
And how has the art scene here around the Atlanta area changed since you've known it?
Well, I haven't lived here this entire time. We've traveled quite a bit across the country. I've lived in New Jersey. I've lived in Milford, Connecticut. Most of the time was spent in Florida. My children were all born in Florida. And then we moved here to the Georgia area 7 years ago. And unfortunately, we came here to retire. The year after we moved here, my husband suddenly passed away. So he was a performer himself, an artist and voiceover person, and wonderful film and stage actor. So here am I. I kind of went into an emotionally dark place after he died. And so when starting beginning spoken word, that was really extremely therapeutic for me, along with the journaling, doing the morning pages, gardening, meditating, and finding new friends, reinventing myself, getting back into the scene.
That is a devastating loss, and I'm sorry for your loss, and I'm glad that you were able to turn to those sorts of abilities to re-find yourself, because you have turned into someone, as I know, that inspires so many people with what you do at UUCA and with the plays that you put on there. And I wonder what you have lined up for the future. What has you excited going forward here in 2019 and beyond?
Well, I'm working now since late last year, every Sunday in a drama education program. That's 1 hour at UUCA with children. And I like to think of it as being theater for social change. It's a yo-yo experience because it's new and it's discovering and it's working with the children and addressing their needs on a weekly basis, which I'm really enjoying as they develop different characters through puppetry and through different exercises. Last year, I wrote and produced the play about Clarence, and which is a story, is a mystery mother-daughter relationship type story, and it speaks about the relationship between a mother and a daughter, and it also addresses sobriety. And so I hope to do a sequel, I should say, to that, because the story was really left up in the air. So I just need a stage to be able to perform that. At Clayton State, I would like to audition for Tartuffe. I don't know if I'll get a part in it, which is a Molière play, but I'd like to audition for that and perhaps get a part in that. And also probably I'm really feeling some kind of magnetic force with some Shakespeare or classical group in the area. So if I could stretch myself and become a part of a group and do some classical theater, that would be great. In the future, I would love to do some film. As I said, I would love to have a life-changing role. I like characters like Mother Teresa. Women that made a major difference in the world. Yeah.
I'd like to write a play about my grandmother one day and have you have a role in that. That would she was a wonderful woman. And I don't know why that just popped into my head, but maybe future ambitions there.
That would be great. That would be such an honor, Scott.
I think, I don't know, we'll have to discuss that in more detail down the line as things play out. This hour has just flown by. I knew it would once we started talking, because you're such an interesting person and have lived such a inspiring artistic life, and we haven't even had a chance really to talk about your poetry, which I know is also beautiful, and maybe just take a couple minutes here to talk about your writing and that process and what it does for you.
I will, and I do want to also say that on the 27th of April at UUCA is Wine, Cheese, and Spoken Word, and we have Felton Addy, who is a writer and a performer, and Erica Land, who is a 21st century war poet. So they will be our featured artists, and there's an open mic, and any of your listeners can perform their work during the open mic. I get up early in the morning, somewhere between 3 and 7 a.m., and I practice ikebana, which is Japanese floral design. It's a form of meditation, and I write. So I don't always do the floral design first thing, but I always write, and I sometimes just write my thoughts. It was one of our poet friends, David Hutto, who encouraged me to write on a daily basis, and I'm eternally thankful to him for that, because it has done wonders for me. And it has helped me to tap into my emotions. It's helped me to discover parts of myself that I didn't know. It's helped me to focus in terms of my memory. It's developed creativity. Sometimes all I write is gratitudes, just gratitudes. And that has helped me on a daily basis when the path is looking dark and I'm daring to feel unworthy, to know that I have a purpose and there's a reason that I was born.
Beautifully said again, that affirmation process of life, even when dealing with the inherent struggling and suffering that this human condition brings us, is so important. And I think getting into that space and state of gratitude, especially as you're talking about doing it first thing in the morning and centering yourself in that energy field throughout the day, is such a productive and positive way to go about things. And so shout out definitely to David Hutto, who is a wonderful writer in his own right, and hope to get him on the show one day. And so we've got about 90 seconds left, Carol. I want to thank you so much for coming on this evening. Been looking forward to this conversation for so long, and I'll turn the floor over if you have any final words of wisdom you'd like to impart for us.
Yeah, well, I would say it's important for us to find our tribe. You know, people who are like-minded that we can network with the way you're doing now, and people that will positively affirm us and lift us up.
Absolutely. I echo that completely, and just want to say, do check out on April 27th the upcoming UUCA event. They're always brilliant. I will be there, and so I hope to see friends there as well. And I think they can probably check out on a Facebook event page for that, I would think. And
yes.
Okay. Very good. And so once again, thank you so much, Carol. Wonderful job with the Laramie Project. Enjoyed that immensely, and enjoyed this conversation tonight with you. Hope you have a wonderful night ahead, my friend.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much for having me on. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you, my friend. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. That was Carol Welter, and we will be back here on Songs of Selah on the 13th with an episode featuring Michael Lee Johnson, and there will be an open mic in the second hour that night, So anyone who's interested in calling in and reading some of their work can do so. That show will be starting at 9 p.m. Eastern, and I want to thank you for tuning in here tonight. I know that everyone that listened to this got some valuable insights from a great mind listening to Carol talk about her life tonight, and so thank you to her one more time. As I bid everyone adieu, I'll see you next time. Selah.